Very sad. Anyway, it got me thinking.
Here are some of the theories and thoughts after watching episode 4 of Loki season 2. After that phenomenal cliffhanger at the end, I kind of went insane for a moment. This episode is titled as Heart of the TVA, referring to the temporal loom, as stated by OB in episode 1.
Temporal loom is the heart of the TVA.
The opening scene begins with a scattered and branched sacred timeline, and the crumbling asteroid foundation of the Citadel, as opposed to how we originally saw it in season 1, where everything was in order and under control, which was disrupted by the demise of He Who Remains, that led to this current chaos. Then we cut to Ravonna and Miss Minutes, alongside the corpse of He Who Remains. And this is where Miss Minutes reveals the secret of everyone's memories being wiped out, following the multiversal war. This is explained by the visual representation of miniature figurines, with the continuation of the audio recording, when Loki was in the war room previously. It almost feels like He Who Remains can't digest the fact that he partnered with someone who he does not consider his equal, for helping him win the war. Then we get the "see you soon" phrase, before Renslayer left.
See you soon.
Obviously being the last thing said, when Sylvie killed him in season 1.
See you soon.
So, if we think about it, just like how he knew Sylvie will be meeting his variants, he also knew the same will be happening with Ravonna, as both of their last words from He Who Remains were, "See you soon," and they both never actually saw him again, but instead, his variant, Victor Timely. After that, he summons Miss Minutes, and commands her to erase everyone's memory of He Who Remains, which I think was done in order to protect the TVA, and himself, from future threats. That's the exact moment the story of the Timekeepers was created. And we have to remember that, when Loki was sent to the past, he ended up in a TVA whose memories were not erased yet, and they all knew that they were working for He Who Remains from the beginning.
Does he want us to just let them all branch?
This sequence sort of reminded me of the No Way Home ending, where Peter asks Doctor Strange to wipe out everyone's memory of his existence, for the greater good of the multiverse. After that, the scene cuts to this terrifying face of He Who Remains in the war room, where Victor Timely will be showing up to the TVA, right after this moment from the previous episode. Then he takes a look around the place, with the Timekeepers and the multiversal war, where Loki and Mobius explain him of how they need his help for fixing the loom. Then they take him to the basement of the TVA, where Victor finally meets Ouroboros, and this is where the grandfather paradox, or the chicken egg paradox, comes into play, as OB states that he learned everything from Victor Timely, who indeed learned everything from Ouroboros.
It's like a snake eating its own tail.
A snake eating its own tail is actually what is known as Ouroboros, which is an ancient symbol depicting a dragon, or a snake eating its own tail, signifying the never-ending loop of infinity, and the eternal cycle of destruction and rebirth, which I think is the same thing that is going to happen with the TVA, where for the moment it gets destroyed now, but respawns again from a different point in time, being the past, as Loki regains his time-slipping ability, and uses it to travel back in time, until they figure out a plausible solution out of various failed attempts, for preventing the temporal meltdown, and reset the loop of cause and effect. Now back to the scene, where OB explains how they have to increase the diameter of the loom's intake rings, manage the extra branches by the throughput multiplier. Then Victor partners with OB, as he sees Ouroboros as his equal, and worthy of the partnership. After that, Sylvie confronts Mobius, of how he never thought of his variant life before the TVA, which I think might be revealed in the next episode, where he used to work as a jet ski salesman, who will be recruited by Loki, along with Ouroboros and the others, who have not yet been kidnapped by the TVA yet, and are leading a normal life on the timeline. Next the scene cuts to General Dox, X5, and the Minutemen in the time box room, where B-15 seeks Dox's help for saving the TVA. After that, Sylvie mistakenly ends up in the automat, also known as the pie room. And by the way, there's this another crazy theory that the food supply, and all of the key lime pies in the pie section, are actually the human remains of the people that were crushed in the time box, where the blood, and everything else is transformed into the key lime pies, which when consumed, may cause the variants not to think about their previous life before the TVA. Now back to the scene, where Sylvie says how Victor was so scared that she couldn't kill him.
Couldn't do it. Timely just looked so scared.
Contrary to He Who Remains, who was kind of excited to die and unleash the chaos. Then Loki recalls the events of the first Thor film, where he states how Thor has gotten soft.
Some years ago, my brother was banished from Asgard. And when he came back, he was different. Changed somehow. Said he'd gone soft.
Likely referring to this scene during the final battle.
Come on, what happened to you on Earth that turned you so soft? Don't tell me it was that woman.
Then Sylvie says how it would be easier to burn the TVA and start from scratch.
It would just be easier to burn this place down and start from scratch.
Which might actually be a possibility in the next 2 episodes, where the TVA is again rebuilt from scratch after getting destroyed, as Loki and Sylvie may escape the temporal meltdown. Then Loki says how they have to play God and do better than He Who Remains.
It's up to us to do better than he who remains.
Which is exactly what He Who Remains wanted in the first place, where he explained Loki and Sylvie how they can take over the TVA instead of killing him.
You kill me and destroy all this, and you don't just have one devil, you have an infinite amount. Or, you two run the thing.
After that, Ravonna and Miss Minutes travel to the time box room and offers General Dox and her Minutemen a deal, where they can return back to their original lives, if they help her re-establish control over the TVA. And this is where Brad switches sides with Ravonna, and everyone else get crushed by the time box, which Miss Minutes enjoys quite excessively, implying how psychotic and sadistic she really is. Also, the whole sequence with Brad Wolf actually reminded me a bit of Scourge the Executioner, from Thor Ragnarok, where Hela shows up to Asgard and kills everyone who opposed her. Meanwhile Scourge, out of fear of dying, he too switches sides and betrays the other Asgardians, but in the end, he leaves Hela and sacrifices himself for Asgard. Both of these characters had to betray their respective teams and switched sides for staying alive rather than dying with honor. After that, Victor and OB successfully integrate the throughput multiplier, and Victor piques interest in the hot cocoa machine, which is the reason he gets captured by X5 after pruning D90 to the void. Then Miss Minutes starts to rapidly take control of the TVA systems, where Sylvie and Loki try to find Victor, and as the elevator doors get stuck, Sylvie says,
She's trying to slow us down.
Take the stairs!
An epic reference to Avengers 1, when Loki got defeated, and the Hulk was trying to get in the elevator, he was told to take the stairs, that resulted in the beginning of the entire series.
Take the stairs.
Yeah. Stop.
Take the stairs. Take the stairs.
It's just hard to believe that everything that is happening right now was because of Hulk taking the stairs and hitting Tony, who had the Tesseract. Now, this is the moment, the sequences from episode 1 come into full circle, where we find out that the person who pruned Loki was his future self that had the D90's pruning stick and understood what needs to be done. Then we cut to the war room, where Miss Minutes gets rebooted by OB for bypassing the system, where she glitches and ends up dead. Which may not be the case, as we have seen in Age of Ultron. Jarvis was thought to be killed by the Ultron program, but later in the movie Tony says that he just went underground for the moment, which might be the same case with Miss Minutes, who is temporarily terminated for now, but might have a chance to revert back to life later on. After that, following a power down, X5 goes to investigate outside the war room, where he gets enchanted and mind-controlled by Sylvie. Again a classic nod to Age of Ultron, where Wanda enchants Tony's mind all of a sudden, that makes him take Loki's scepter. Then X5 prunes Renslayer to the void. Next, Victor, Loki, and Sylvie hustle to the Temporal Loom Station, where they scan his aura for opening the blast doors, and Victor decides to fix the loom himself and says,
Time to be brave.
Might be a reference to Balder the Brave, I guess. Then comes along the most shocking moment, where, the second Victor enters the gangway, he instantly gets spaghettified, which inevitably leads to the meltdown of the loom and the destruction of the TVA, with the same epic soundtrack that was played during the end credits of Season 1 Episode 5, after Loki and Sylvie enchant Alliath and get to the end of time. Now, here are some of the theories on what might be happening next. A primary theory is that Loki will be regaining his time-slipping ability following the meltdown, but this time, he might master the control over it and travels back to the past TVA before it gets destroyed and tries multiple possibilities of saving it until they find an accurate solution. So, this scene of Loki walking down the gangway of the loom might be because of his usage of magic and a protective spell around himself. Another theory is that, following the temporal meltdown, everything is going to get reset back to when it all started, as Loki and Sylvie escape the catastrophe, they might start to rebuild the TVA from scratch, just as the way Sylvie intended, and become TVA's benevolent rulers. Another theory is the multiple Loki variants theory, where certain variants of Loki keep time slipping to the past until they fix the loom. Of course, the next 2 episodes are obviously going to reveal the pre-TVA life of Mobius, B-15, and Casey. And Mobius will finally be riding on his jet ski again. Also, I think Loki may deliberately walk down the gangway of the temporal loom, where after getting spaghettified due to the radiation, he may respawn again in the past, with some of his memories still intact. So, it is a possibility that, whenever the TVA gets destroyed, it just respawns again as a basic version, and every other variant like Mobius may end back to their original pre-TVA timeline, without the memory of the TVA. Where Loki might time slip and gather everyone again, for restoring the sacred timeline, preventing the temporal meltdown, and stopping the multiversal war of Kangs. That's it. I can't believe the season will be ending in just 2 more episodes. I could literally watch Loki all day. And of course there's hope for season 3, which is highly likely, but not confirmed yet. This episode was phenomenal. Can't wait for the next one. Thanks for watching, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and have a glorious day.